Welcome to Transformational Blueprints, the podcast that's here to tackle the big question. Why do so many transformation programs fall short? And what can we do about it? I'm Mario Michaels, founder and director of Synaxia Group, and I'm thrilled to have you join me. In this series, we go beyond theory, bringing you first-hand stories and insights from some of the world's top architecture and transformation leaders. It's all about sharing real-world lessons, sparking fresh ideas, and giving back to the architecture community. So whether you're looking to learn, be inspired, or stay ahead of the curve, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive in together. Hi everyone, today we'll be talking to Chris Quinn about organising architecture in different operating models. Chris has got 28 years of experience working in technology roles across retail, banking and service industries. The last 6 years as the chief architect for the Co-op Group. Chris has had a key role in shaping the modernisation of the technology and data functions within the Co-op, including integrating digital, data and IT into one function, driving business and data platform modernisation, transitioning Co-op to the cloud, digitisation of Co-op products and services, and more recently, introducing generative AI into Co-op's business operations. Under Chris's leadership, the architecture function has developed from a small group of business siloed specialists into thriving enterprise and solution architecture practice of close to 30 plus talented architects. So quite the background, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Mario. Lovely to see you again.
So we always start with a bit of background. Obviously, I've given a really high level view there. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I fell into architecture by accident as much as anything. My background in retail was in delivery and execution. I'd done some account management for technology, and obviously there's a bit of architecture and strategy associated with that. But really, when I joined the Co-op, which is 18 years ago now, that I came on board as a strategist, and we were working very closely with the enterprise architecture team, and that was my route in. Really, I just found that seeing the world through capabilities and thinking about how you tie technology to business outcomes really just switched lights on in my head, and my journey started there. Really.
Okay, brilliant. Now, in this series, we're going to be starting every episode with a question from the previous guest. So his question, this was Pablo Baldeca from Aspen Insurance. What is the thing that's excited you the most as a decision that you've made as an architect for an organization?
Oh, tough question. Thanks, Pablo. Yeah, I think, there's lots of decisions that, really ambitious ones that we've taken and exciting decisions that we've taken. I think probably the one that would stand out for me is when we in the Co-op embarked on bringing an e-commerce offer to the market. Okay. We're a convenience retailer, so it's not like click and collect or big box supermarket deliveries we operate in. We operate in a convenience market. And then we partner quite a lot with the likes of Deliveroo and Uber Eats. So it's that quick delivery. So going to market with our own offering in that space was something that was quite unique. And I think some of the technology choices that we had to make there were very iterative. We had to stand up a business quite quickly. We had to think short, medium and long term in the decisions that we were taking. So it was quite an exciting time as an architecture team to be involved with the engineers and with our business product leads to then choose the technologies that would get us off the ground, but it was allow us to scale pretty quickly. So that was quite a different dynamic experience for us. That I'd go with that one, I think.
That sounds brilliant. I didn't realise the Co-op actually did that. So yeah, I'll have to tap into that because there's one around the corner from us.
Yeah, we're the biggest operator in the UK. We're Deliveroo's biggest customer as well.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. Right. Fair enough. Very good. So what do you think makes a great architect in today's world then?
I guess that I think being a great architect is seeing beyond just the technology or even the business capabilities. It's about outcomes, isn't it? And what you deliver in terms of value for your organization. So I think for me, the best architects have sort of transcended the architecture to some extent, and then are very much focused on how they're going to deliver great outcomes to the organization, because those things are much broader than just simple technology decisions that you've got to make, or patterns or guardrails that you've got to implement. There you're really trying to look at how the decisions you make return real value for your organization. And that for me is the key thing.
Fine. Okay. And as architects sort of climb through the ranks, you're a great example of that. What are the biggest challenges architects face when transitioning from a, individual contributor role into a leadership role?
I guess the first thing for me is letting go of the detail in some respect. As an architect, then, you're well respected for your detail, for your understanding, spotting those little things, making sure that, the architectures, the designs that we lay down are effective, are going to work. But, leadership, you have to have a broader context. You have to let go of the detail. It's not necessarily about the technology choices, whether you've chosen Oracle or SAP as your ERP, or Azure OpenAI or Google Bard as your Gen AI solution. Those things are important in the context, but you've got to have a broader understanding of the issues that are at play in your business. And it's your job as a leader to have a grasp of them, go beyond the business outcomes, for example, and think about how your business is successful financially, culturally, politically, all of those things that as a leader, you really need to have a viewpoint on.
Okay. And within those skills, then, how do those skills translate into effective leadership, and where do they fall short? And where have you seen that, both those examples?
Yeah, I think I was interested. I was reading one of your LinkedIn posts with Kevin Donovan that you'd sent a link on about not many architects make that leap into C-suite roles. I think, and my career is a similar example. My career has been pretty linear, but I think where you see architects that have truly moved into sort of proper leadership roles, then they've had a very broad experience. I know of architects that operate at board level, and some of those have been through very entrepreneurial businesses, and they've been in there with the founders of the business right at the start. So you're not just an architect, you're understanding how that business has got to grow. You're making decisions around the business. And I think for me, certainly in my career, trying to get into that space and understand what those things are that drive the business, and be effective at operating at that level is really important as a leader. That said, there are some great skills that I think architects can take with them into that type of role. So, quite often architects will have a good understanding of organizational objectives and outcomes. They'll know where pain points are in the organization. Might not be through technology, but they'll see that in the business processes. They can see the capabilities, they can see the systems that are at play and how effective they are. Architects often have great consultancy skills. So you're influencing, you're trying to make complex things simple for people to understand. And I think they are skills that really translate into leadership. Operating at principle level, how you're making decisions based on principle. Architects do that as well. So there is a number of things like that I think really do translate well.
And sometimes you don't have the environment to be able to do that. So you don't have the environment, let's say, as a solution architect. So I'm a solution architect. I want to be a chief architect or a head of strategy and architecture in the future, or director, whatever the job title is. But the environment I'm in isn't allowing me to go out to the wider business and understand, right, sales work like that. Can I come up with a solution to streamline their process and add value to them as a team or as a business unit? Or marketing, or over here as an architect, my job is to go out and understand what they do and how I can make their lives easier, better, whatever it may be. But if the business doesn't give you that opportunity to be able to do that, how do you gain those business skills that are really important to becoming an architect, beyond the technology?
Well, the first thing I'd say is have some patience. Things you don't sort of transform your role or how people see you overnight, but you can be inquisitive, and you can go and ask questions. You can go and understand. I think as a solution architect, you're in quite a privileged position because you are talking to leaders across the business about the outcomes that they want. You're looking at requirements. You're trying to translate them. And quite often you're in a place where you can spot whether it will work or not.
Yep.
Right. And in that sense, then you can get into conversations to understand more. You can agitate people and give them different perspectives on how to deliver their outcomes. And those things will probably be a longer time frame than a project. But it allows you to start to create relationships and build relationships and become a valued person for advice and for guidance. And if you can keep building those platforms and keep expanding those platforms, then people's perception of you will change and the value that you can deliver. And if you talk to the right people for long enough, then when those opportunities arise, then you will find yourself in the frame.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Are you able to share an experience where you've had to shift your mindset from solving a technical problem to managing people and strategy?
Yeah, I think it sort of fits. I mean, there's a number of times through my career now that I've written sort of technology strategies for my IT, my IT department, my technology department, and I can think one of the first ones that I did when I was in a leadership role. Then we had a bit of a void. We didn't have a technology strategy as I came into the role. And if I'm honest, Mario, I mean, I rolled my sleeves up and I wrote the thing, and I had a team of 9 or 10 architects, and I gave them instructions in terms of what I needed to be able to then write the enterprise technology strategy. But it was my strategy, so I didn't really ask them to contribute or ask their opinion on how we should shape it and grow it. And don't get me wrong, I presented to the board, I presented to the exec, it landed really well, but it didn't sustain in the way that I wanted. And if I take this back to the last one that we wrote as a team 3 years ago, which is still really relevant today, the language, the narrative, we've influenced business strategy through what we did in that one. Then what I did there was really help to set out the outcomes that I wanted. I didn't lead on the work myself. I helped coach and guide my team. They came up with the right language in the strategy. They talked about how we would translate that. I tried to then make sure that we opened the doors for the conversation with the right people. Where we saw challenge, I tried to create the space for the team to succeed. I would spend my time summarizing the messages and trying to think about how I would land them with senior execs and the senior audience and my CIO. So my role was very, very different. It was something that we all owned. But what happened then is the team take that and implement it. They feel a sense of ownership for it. So a very different way of working against, how I did it the very first time I was in the role.
And that probably came as you developed yourself as a leader, but also as you got to know yourself a little bit, which leads me really nicely on to the next sort of point, because how has understanding your neurodiversity shaped your approach to leadership and architecture? Because you've recently found out you're neurodiverse. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes. Just this year, I've had a diagnosis for autism and ADHD. I guess the first thing is that it's given me a greater awareness of the unique differences of everybody. Before my journey and my family's journey, because my daughters, that's how I came to get an understanding, is both my daughters were diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And, I'm probably ashamed to say that before that, I didn't really understand what autism was or ADHD. You see them as ADHD is this thing of boys who get into trouble. You know what I mean? That's the sort of narrative that you have around it. And I know, I mean, ultimately, regardless of background, everybody has challenges in terms of how they bring their best today, whether you've got a health condition or you're a carer for children or a disabled person, a vulnerable person, your family circumstances, your background, all of those things play in. But neurodiversity needs to have the same frame of reference. And I'm not sure it necessarily does today because I don't think it's well understood. So for me, as much as anything, it's that understanding and greater awareness of the things that my team are going through. Talking about my own journey, as I've had several people really open up to me and start to talk more openly about their neurodiversity. And I think that's really important, especially if they're suffering with their health and their well-being because of it.
And now knowing what you know, are there any instances where you look back and think, right, because of that, I probably dealt with that in the wrong way? Or have there been any sort of big challenges navigating into leadership roles with autism and ADHD?
I mean, absolutely. I think there are. I mean, again, it's, don't get me wrong. I mean, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, right? Yeah. In terms of how you sort of bring them into work every day. And, it's important that you have people around you that complement you. But there's no doubt, I mean, my journey in terms of understanding myself helps me to understand when I'm at my best and when I'm not. And as an example, that neurodiversity, if I am preparing or presenting, just this year we had, a 2-hour session deep dive with our board on artificial intelligence, and I've been leading all of the internal discussion on AI. I feel a huge sense of responsibility for it. And that is something that in that sense, do you then delegate properly when you feel that sense of responsibility for that? And that comes out of my neurodiversity. But then, in the moment, that 2 hours with the board, being on stage like that is absolutely exhausting. So, you're trying to bring your best into that conversation, but you are masking, you're covering up, a number of the sort of the issues that you're feeling and how you bring that to bear. So it's almost like you've got to go lie down afterwards. Yeah. But those things become very difficult, and just an understanding that not everybody feels the same. Some people absolutely thrive in that environment, and trying to compete with those people, can be quite difficult. Yeah.
And some people don't know that they're masking. And I suppose as a leader, going slightly off piece here, it's really difficult because if you knew who in your team was neurodiverse based on how they appear, how they conduct themselves, how they act, how they behave, and so on, you'd probably change things around to suit them a little bit more, to not necessarily be more inclusive, but I suppose deal with conversations in a different way, which is more conducive to how they think and how they behave. But I suppose, I've known you for 6-7 years. I would never have thought, based on appearance, the signs were there that you were autistic or had ADHD. So as a leader, it's difficult to, number one, see it. Number two, if you do see it and you sort of bring it up, somebody might react in a really different way to how you did. They might not be as open, and they might get quite defensive. So it's really, really difficult. And I suppose on that, from whether it's a leadership role or not, what advice would you give to other, again, not just architects, but other people at different levels within, the corporate hierarchy? What advice do you have for others that may have neurodiverse traits who are looking to excel, in their roles and leadership roles, actually, to be fair, because I do think, it is different.
Yeah, completely. I think, the first thing for me, I mean, I've always been on a journey to try and understand myself. And, you find yourself in certain situations and you see how others, I don't know, describe it as playing a game of football, right? Yeah. I'm never going to be Lionel Messi, but I look at somebody who does that type of thing and you go, how do you do that? And I can't. And you find yourself in that position of trying to understand more and develop that thinking. So knowing yourself is really important, and your strengths and your weaknesses, because as I say, I mean, learned behavior and masking are really important, right? They are essential skills. I bring them to work every day in the way that I need to work. They're only a problem if they're damaging to your health and well-being. If you are having to mask and finding yourself in a situation where you can't find the space to breathe and people aren't giving you that space, and it turns negative, then that's an issue. So you have to have an open conversation.
Yeah.
And what I see and what I'm learning from, the best people will be really upfront about what their needs are. They're really managing that, asking for assistance from others, telling them what their needs are. And you find that people are really open to that. To your point, then people will adjust their behavior and they'll work with you. So if you can be precise and clear about what you need, then people will normally give you that space to do that. So knowing yourself and understanding yourself, because then you can concentrate in terms of some of the fantastic strengths that, that bring. I mean, I thrive so much on structure. I can see things that others can't. I can think really quickly in the structure. I do pattern spotting is fantastic. I bring a lot of high energy to things, creativity, ability to hyper focus, all of these strengths. But there are things that I can't do. And at that point, I have to ask for a little bit more time and assistance. I was in a workshop last week that got quite abstract. And I just said, look, I just need 5-10 minutes just to understand where we're going here and understand it better so I can contribute better. And you get that space if you're up front.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Okay. Now, I've known the co-op for, 12 years since I've been working within the talent space within Manchester as the largest employer and done a load of work with the co-op. But I've known within architecture, you've gone through various iterations of operating models. Why is understanding the operating models crucial for architects?
So, I mean, earlier on the call, we were talking about the best architects being focused on outcomes. And I think that's the key part for it. For me, my journey has been, if I want to really transform my business and make a difference for my business, I can't do it just through technology. I have to have the right culture. The business has to have the right execution. How you can leverage technology to deliver those outcomes is as much dependent on the operating model as the operating model is on the technology. So you need to have an interest in those things if you're going to make an effective difference to your organization, in my view.
Okay. And just to take a step back, just for the people that don't understand either what an operating model is or what they should be looking out for, tell us a little bit about what you define as an operating model, whether that's business-wide or whether that's within your architecture team.
Yeah, so when I think about an operating model, then we're not talking about an organization design. We're talking about all of the components of the business and how they come together, whether that is your business processes, it is the culture that operates within your organization, it is the organization structures that you have in place, the communication structures, the types of individuals you've got in there, and their needs and wants, then, and your technology forms part of that. So it's a holistic view of how you would look at your organization. I mean, there's some great material that I've used over the years. I mean, Andrew Campbell's written a book called Operating Model Canvas, which looks at value chains and value streams and how to look at the lens of your business through your value chain and break it down into different components, and talks about enterprise architecture and business architecture in that context. And another one is Milan Gunther, who wrote a book called Intersection, which is about an enterprise design framework. And that's really good because it gives you a context for the bigger organization, and again shows you the role of architecture within that too. So good frame of references for a much broader conversation about how organizations operate.
Okay. And why is it important to align architecture with the operating model? As in, obviously, it enhances business outcomes, but how does aligning architecture with the operator model improve or enhance business outcomes?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things for me. The first thing I'll probably touch on there is that your technology choices will be influenced by your operating model. If the river's flowing south, unless you're a salmon, you're going south, right?
Yeah.
You're going with the groove of your organization. And if you don't like the groove, or the groove is going in the wrong way, then your technology choices, the architectures that you want to lay down, aren't going to succeed. So then it's, well, how are you manipulating the operating model to land what you think is right in the organization? It's Conway's law, isn't it, that talks about your systems being constrained by that organization structure. Yeah. So if you want to have systematic change, you've got to think about the organization that operates in. And I think the second thing it's worth talking about is our industry has changed significantly. Certainly my organization has, in terms of thinking about digital, thinking about products, and the experience that we create for customers and colleagues within our organization. And that's meant that we're no longer just working in projects, we're working in agile and durable teams and continuous improvement. And so if you want your architectures to succeed, those people who are running that continuous improvement, that product, are making the decisions. So if you're not interested in the operating model and that context that they work in, then you're not going to be able to land your architecture successfully.
Okay. So what steps should architects take to become more proficient in designing or adapting the operating models within their organization?
I think it's leaning on people who do have that knowledge. I think, over the last, 7 or 8 years, then, our relationship in enterprise architecture and our business architects as well has developed quite heavily with our people team. Now, we're a large organization, so we have organization designers within our organization that have spent time and some of the material that I just spoke about earlier, Andrew Campbell's book, came from them in terms of input and that insight in terms of how to create good organization design. I mean, they tend to start from the same place that we do. They will start from value streams. They will start from capabilities. They may look at capabilities slightly differently. We look at business. They look at people skills. But you start in the same place. I also find if you are on a journey in terms of digitizing your IT function, then I find people who've come from backgrounds in engineering and customer experience and in product have got a greater understanding of how operating models work. Books like Team Topologies and Corporate Rebels, things like that, become Bibles for these people. And I think you need to understand how those things operate because they do affect your architecture.
Of course they do. Okay. Are you able to provide an example where an operating model misalignment led to challenges in a project?
Yeah. I mean, misalignment might be a strong word, but certainly where, in this decision and, in a large organization, then these things will happen in terms of different viewpoints. But, one of our businesses, a smaller business, was choosing a new ERP platform. And our CFO at the time, the corporate finance team that we had supported all of our business units. And, our larger business had already picked an ERP platform. And the CFO was looking at his operating model in finance and saw a lot of opportunity for consolidating onto a single ERP platform for the organization. He could improve a lot of his back-end processes and keep a general ledger that was pretty thick with a high transaction drill down across all of his businesses. So really good outcomes that he was describing. But on the other side, when you looked at the small business, the big enterprise scale ERP wasn't flexible enough to meet the dynamic needs of that business. I mean, the business was still running very much on paper, in their operations. So, you're in a place where you're looking at the decisions like that and you can see a different culture and a different operating model playing out in your business line as opposed to how you see your financial the financial support model that was in place. So you can't have your cake and eat it. You're not going to get both outcomes. And really what we had to do was really bring both of those problems to the CFO and the MD in the business to talk about what outcomes they were going to get from their technology and how that would impact the different operating models that we had in place. So really trying to bring that to life. And there's several examples where that plays out. So it's not quite a misalignment, but you can see how a different perspective and viewpoint, really drives different outcomes on your technology choices.
Okay, that makes sense. You've structured a load of different teams in a load of different ways across multiple business lines. How do you structure architecture teams with diverse business lines? And just for sort of context, when we're talking about different business lines, if you look at Co-op Group, you've got retail, which is their sort of shops, you've got funeral care, you've got legal, all with completely different outcomes, providing a completely different service, but yet part of the same group. So how do you structure your architecture teams to, I suppose, support and drive business outcomes within those different business lines?
Yeah, so we've been quite a few different operating models within Co-op in my time here. I think there's probably 7 or 8 times that we've been through that journey. Not all of them positive in that sense. So sometimes we've had to shrink the team. Sometimes we're growing and developing the team. So, I think that context is really important when you're making your decisions. But also, I think the business context is really important in terms of how federated your different businesses are, or what centralization for the business needs to take place. As I spoke about there, the Co-op is very much, we have independence in the business lines, but there's an awful lot of shared services where we've consolidated for cost at the back end to support all of the businesses, and that creates some of the tensions that I spoke about. I think for me, the most important thing, and one of the key principles we've had in all of our operating model type discussions, is to ensure that we're devolving responsibilities and have architects that are close to the business operations. So there's a principle there that's always been true, and how we would want to operate. But I think where it's been best for us, there is a common vision and shared goals and strong collaboration across the team that operate together. So, as I say, the context of your organization is important, but keeping architects at the front of the business problems is really important. You don't want to try and centralize and move away from where the business decisions are happening. You have to be right there on the front line with your business leaders.
And then, so how do you balance that centralized architectural oversight with decentralized execution?
Yeah, I think again, it's challenging, and it's not governance, right? Because I think the governance plays a role in what you need to do, but I don't think you ever necessarily convince people just by telling them the answer. I think, as I say, devolving the responsibility to those that are close to the front and making sure that they're working through the business problems is really important, because then you are getting designs and solutions that are more aligned to the outcomes. But you, as I say, you do have to have that common vision and shared goals. And so it's important, for us to have a strong strategy, because the strategy and the vision become the anchor for how the team operate and for the conversations that happen in the team. So, I think it's important to do that. Then it becomes about, conversations around the decisions. So you need visibility, you need transparency of the decisions. And then you're working with architects then to look at the different viewpoints and the different perspectives on the decisions, and thinking about your strategy execution, how you want to bring that to life. And you can challenge in the moment in the decision, in terms of the best way to take it forward. So the conversation and the discussion is more important than the governance that you would wrap around it. I think the other thing that we've put in place that's worked quite well for us is a practice model. So what we've done today is, while the architects are close to the front line and their task is orientated around that, then our line management, our skills development, our career development is as a team, is as a central team. So it starts to create a relationship amongst the architects, and then you start to see them to work together to help each other and support each other in terms of the development, and that's how the strategy comes to life.
And you've touched on an area there which I was going to ask next, actually. So from a team structure, are you able to give us an example of, you've got one group, different business lines, different levels of architects, domain solutions, enterprise, product led, and so on and so forth, and then you're now saying there's like almost from a career development and so on and so forth, and training, and that's centralized almost as one architecture practice. So what does the structure look like, to bring us back to our original point? What makes a good architect is business focused, at the front line, understanding what's going on in their domain or their business line, to be able then to pull back to, right, we're going to use this, or we're going to do this process, or we're going to use this piece of technology to help us do that. So what does the structure of the architecture team look like for that to become successful?
Okay. Well, firstly, I'm not sure we've ever got it entirely right. So I'm always interested in other viewpoints in terms of how you bring it to life. But we've started with the devolved nature of the team. Then we've started by making sure that we've got architects aligned to the value streams in our businesses that are leading and shaping the roadmaps and the direction alongside the business leaders. So we're trying to then have a future view of the target architecture that we're working towards. But that then is under the umbrella of our strategy, of our technology strategy, which I said earlier, we're now into year 3 of that strategy, and it's still as much relevant today as it was when we wrote it. So we have a good umbrella around the strategy there that people work to. I think what we've done very much in the practice is then thinking about how we deploy architects into durable teams or onto projects. So a lot of the solution architecture or the business architects that we would work with, then work into those teams, and they're being guided by the roadmaps, by that direction that we've set out. But they're
on particular projects. Sorry to interrupt. Okay. So that might be your e-commerce solution. You've got a solution architect, you've got a business architect, an EA, who then pulls it together from a business perspective. Okay, fine.
Yeah. The enterprise architects have got the broadest picture.
Yeah.
Your value stream architects are then working with the business lines to see what their needs, and there's a relationship between those architects and the enterprise architects, because that's got to come to your enterprise target state and how you manage your portfolio of change. But then as change is being delivered, then your solution architects, will be within the change, writing the designs that are needed, working with the engineers, working with the delivery managers to drive those things through. We also make sure we've got horizontals that are accounted for as well. So for us, that is security, data, our infrastructure and networks. Yeah. So those architects cut across all of the value streams, and then it creates a tension, in terms of how you would deliver those outcomes. But really what you're trying to do is create, positive conversations between the architects where there is transparency and you're building that trust, so you can have, tough conversations about the right direction. And sometimes that goes wrong, and you've got to jump on that and get people working in the right way. But it's important that you've got those horizontals that are being accounted for to make sure that you're making long-term cost-effective decisions too.
Okay. And that structure came in when you started the new technology strategy, which was 3 years ago, and it's kind of working. Is it the best structure so far that you've had?
Yes,
Yeah.
as I say, it's not perfect. We're always looking at ways that we can evolve it and change it. Yes, we put it in place around 3 years ago when we implemented this strategy. I think one of our biggest challenges is just the amount of change that we've got going on at the moment. So you find a lot of the team are then heavily involved in supporting projects, not necessarily driving the roadmap. So we just need to shift a little bit to make sure we're effectively pulling those roadmaps together. But of all of the operating models that we've had, it's the most effective.
Fine. Perfect. Okay. We're going to move on to our quickfire questions then. So what do you expect in 2025 will be a game changer from a technology perspective? And if the answer is AI specifically, what part of AI? Because obviously it's a massive umbrella, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's hard to see past AI, isn't it? At the moment. I mean, Google's announcement on quantum was interesting, but that's not going to be a 2025 thing. So it's hard to see past AI. But I think for me, if I was being specific, it would be about digital agents. And I think I can't imagine that any of us who, interact online with organizations in 2025 won't have a conversation with a digital agent and maybe not even know they've done it. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing for 2025 is digital agents.
Right. Okay. What advice would you give to a newly appointed chief architect?
I think, well, firstly, build your network. I think if you're new into role as a chief architect, you need advocates in your business. So amongst your peer group, your new peer group, is make sure you go and build your network and build advocates. If there was a second thing, then I would say look to build a team that complement your skills.
Yeah, fine. Okay, not a bunch of other Chris's. So you're doing the same thing, thinking the same way.
Yeah, don't recruit in your mold. Complement your
what
skills.
A lot of people do. Unconscious bias and confirmation bias kicks into every sort of interview process. We see it a lot. Okay, any advice you wished you received earlier on in your career?
I guess the thing for me is I mentioned it earlier. My career has been quite linear, and but it's been reasonably successful. But I think these days, I mean, the language we use in the co-op is we talk about squiggly careers. But I think probably what I wish that sort of guidance that I'd had early was to go and test yourself in a broader set of roles. Looking back now, spending some time in other disciplines outside of IT, such as operations, HR, and finance, I think would make me a better rounded leader.
Okay. What's the biggest change you expect to see in the market from a talent perspective over the next 5 years?
I'm back to AI again, I think. I mean, for me, architects are looking at how you develop the right type of solutions to solve your business problems. If as an architect, you don't understand artificial intelligence or how you can bring that into your organization to solve your business problems, then you've got a problem over the next 5 years. I think, AI will start to replace digital in some places as consumers interact with it. So, that cutting edge in terms of the implication of AI, then architects need to be thought leaders in that space. And we've just had a number of graduates come into our organization or the postgraduates, so they're spending 12 months with us, and they were talking about how to get into technology and architecture. And I said to them, they probably know more about artificial intelligence than all of my architects combined, just because it's moving so fast. And I think that's the biggest problem for architects is staying abreast of artificial intelligence.
And as you say, thought leaders, but the bridge between the business and what technology and how technology can serve the business. So I think the role of the architect, in general, whatever level, is going to become more prevalent. And historically, where an engineer could do an architecture role, that probably might not be the case in the next 5 years, because they'll be so technology focused, whereas an architect should be able to pull right. Yes, technology, this piece of AI, but actually what impact does that have on the business? And because they've got the relationships outside in the wider business, they can pull it all together and be that glue, I suppose, or that spider web. Question for the next podcast guest: what would you like it to be?
Okay, so I think my question will be, what's the number one skill that you look for in an architect?
Okay, fine. Okay. I will ask that to our next guest. Well, sadly, Chris, we've run out of time. Been a brilliant podcast episode, so thank you so much for joining us. It's been really interesting and great to chat with you about more detail around organising architecture in different operating models. So thanks once again for giving us your time, and I look forward to publishing this one.
No problem, Mario. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of Transformational Blueprints. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found plenty of insights and takeaways to fuel your journey. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could share it, leave a review, or give us a like. It helps us reach more people in the industry who can benefit from these conversations. Don't forget to follow Synaxia Group on LinkedIn to stay updated on new episodes. The links are in the show notes. Join us next time for more tips, strategies, and stories from some of the brightest minds in technology and transformation. Until then, take care and keep transforming.